Alright, so we ordered a batch of 2.5 gallon tanks from the local aquarium shop because Petco cannot get them or just refuses to, whatever. But I always believe you should support the local shops anyway if you want them to support what you want. And so we talked to Daryl, who's a pretty okay guy. I actually went to high school with him. And he's got, I think, 4 2.5s for us and a 5.5. And we're going to do a bulk batch of Arboreals and show you where to get everything. So we went ahead and grabbed our tanks from Daryl, and we're just going to check them out here, get an idea for how big they are, which, as you can see by comparison to my hand, 2.5 is not very big. 5.5 is a little bit bigger. Just so you know how much materials you need to get, what you need to get in plexiglass, what you need to get in hinges, what size vents you could run. I'm almost betting that even with a big hinge I could even do one hinge on these 2.5s, which would be pretty cool. So now we're going to go get some supplies. So we're at our trusty mega hardware store. You can go to whichever one you choose, I don't even care. But we're going to need to grab some acrylic, and the bigger surface area of your acrylic, the more it's going to warp. So since we're only doing 2.5 gallon tanks, we are going to use 1/8 inch. But on our 5.5 gallon tank, we are going to use 1/4 inch, which we have plenty of at home, so we don't need to worry about that. However, you are going to want to get a plastic cutter. They come in handy. We're going to grab the professional one because our one at home is worn out. But the important part is this hook right here, which you'll see when we actually get into it. So then head over to the plumbing aisle, and what you're going to want to score are some gaskets for either sinks or bathtubs or any sort of drain. And you're going to want to pick a size that works well for your lid. Since we're doing 2.5 gallon, we don't need anything big like this. So what we're going to go with something that's 3 inches of an outer diameter, but an 1 3/4 inner diameter. They're like $2, and we are going to take probably all of them. Alright, so now we got our tanks. We're going to work on something for the backdrop. And since we're going to do a bark backdrop, we're going to use Rob's method, only just a little bit different. And you can grab cork bark rounds from your local pet store, and you can get some decent size ones for about $5 a piece. And actually, I wasn't prepared for these being so small. I'll probably only have to use 1 or 2 of these. But the first thing you're going to want to do after you take the tag off is actually break them apart. And they break apart fairly easily into segments. And these segments will actually sit together quite nicely. And when you have your segments broken apart, so that they'll sit nicely in the terrariums, which this one might be a little bit harder. You're going to want to get a cookie sheet and turn your oven up to about 350. Ooh. And with that, place all of these on here. And we don't necessarily have to worry about preheating because, let's face it, we're not baking a cake. We're not after accuracy. We're just after killing off any mold, mites, any infestations that might be on these. And then we're going to call it good at that. So get them all on here, and you just stick them in the oven and somewhat forget about it. You don't want to forget about it entirely because you could just set your house on fire, which would really piss off your lady. So now that we've got our back pieces cut and baked so that we don't have any contamination, we need to actually make our lids before we do our backdrops. The main reason being is we're actually going to cut vents on the lids and cut material off the lids, and we don't want it to get stuck in our backdrops and be in there permanently. So we have here a sheet of 1/8 inch plexiglass, and the big thing with plexiglass is we can't just cut a chunk out of the middle. We have to take it in straight sections. So what we're going to do is actually take our marker and we're going to mark it. And you can measure the distance in here, and that works very well, but I like to actually stick it on here and take my measurement, just because I like it when my lids fit very snug so I don't have any humidity problems. And because we have to go all the way across this, we're going to do it at this end, and we're going to do it at this end. So now that it's marked, I am lucky in that I have a gigantic metal straight edge. We're going to line that up with all of the markings, which these markings are not actually on the glass because there's a thin plastic coating over the glass. You want to leave that on there until you're done. And we are just going to etch in lightly with the tip first before we start digging in. And by cutting this the entire length and doing multiple tanks of this length, we're making 4 tanks worth of cuts in one, which will work out conveniently. Now you notice I start to drag the heel of the blade across the plexiglass, and what that actually does is it scores down into the plexiglass. By scoring into it, it's going to make it easier to fracture. What?
That sound is awful.
Well, shush. So the most effective way to break this is going to be to stick it on, say, like the edge of the counter here, and put some weight on it. Probably again. Alright, so we have a good break. It's still connected by the plastic, but then you'll take your knife, just kind of run along it. We want to just keep as much of that plastic intact on there as we can. Okay, so we need to do essentially the same thing for width. And now all of these are cut to where they fit in the tank. We can mark them for width. And doing tanks this method is a lot easier on little ones. If you're doing something like a 55 or 40 breeder or anything like that, you're making a big flat lid for, on bigger plexiglass, you're going to want to measure. If you're doing this right, you should actually smell the plastic a little bit. Okay. Again, put it against the flat counter. We'll break it off. The trick to a clean break is to make sure you score through at least 1/4 to 1/3 of the plastic. Alright, and we're going to rinse and repeat till we have 4 more that sit on there as nicely as this one does. So after we've got all our lid pieces cut, and they're all identical and they all fit in our 2.5 gallon tank, what we're going to want to do is take one, set it on here. We're going to want to figure how tall we want our bottom section to be, and for us to really get ample humidity, we should really have 2.5 to 3 inches of substrate. So what we're going to want to do is take our marker, find out, approximately where we want to be. We're just going to use our ruler here as a guideline. And we're going to mark it, and we're going to cut across each one at that distance. Then we're going to double check it on each side to make sure it's straight. Just double check. You measure twice, cut once. Okay, that looks fairly straight to me. So, Pop this guy out. We'll notch it. Once again, dig your heel of your knife in. Take out a good groove. Break it off nice and even, and retain your plastic. And you're just going to rinse and repeat on all the rest of your lids.